explicit connotations. I'm Elise from the Crowdfunded Translation Project, and wanted to just tell you a little bit about what that project is and give you some updates about what I've been doing with your support. The Inessa Armand project. After finishing Kalantai's social basis of the female question, I put out a call for suggestions for the next project. One of those suggestions that I received was to translate the essays and letters of Inessa Armand, Kalantai's predecessor at the Bolshevik women's section. Suppressed by Stalin and never translated into English, Armand's writings enrich our understanding of the Bolshevik women's movement in the run-up to the October Revolution and the early days of revolutionary Russia. With your support, I have been able to translate all of her extant essays and am currently raising the last $1,950 to cover the cost of translating the remainder of her extant works, which at this point is just her correspondence. If you would like to support the project, all contributions are beautiful. You'll find links in the description. The Punto Final project is a project that is really just at its inception. Punto Final, for those unfamiliar with it, i.e. likely most of the people watching this right now, was a magazine edited by Manuel Caviese Donoso that ran from 1965 to the eve of the 1973 CIA-backed coup in Chile, and then from 1989 to 2018, publishing a grand total of 894 issues. In addition to being a platform for theoretical and ideological debate, they were also a source of excellent political journalism. Their real-time analysis of political developments in Chile, the rise of the Unidad Popular, the looming coup, and the limits of electoralism has aged extremely well, and is well worth reading for anyone interested in the period. The Chilean left is sort of in a media bubble, and the Anglosphere left really doesn't do a great job of breaking that bubble and really building connections there. So the discussion that you hear in English about Chile, even in supposed left outlets, such as Jacobin, often has little or nothing to do with the state of discussion amongst comrades in Chile. So this is part of my attempts to contribute to sort of breaking down that bubble and fostering some understanding of the thought amongst revolutionaries in Chile, both historically and currently. I have so far translated 7 articles, including a long read on electoralism versus armed struggle called Chile, the Ballot or the Bullet by Punto Final editor Manuel Caviese, and currently am working on various pieces of political analysis from the eve of the electoral campaign that would bring Salvador Allende to power, or at least to government. These include discussions of electoral versus revolutionary strategy and how and to what extent these things can coexist, discussions of US imperialist interference in Chilean politics, One of the challenges of this project, since its inception, has been getting the word out. The billionaire-controlled black box algorithms that dominate our lives don't like small creators or small projects. Nor are they particularly keen on ideological viewpoints that are inconsistent with the whims of billionaires. What's more, they positively detest anyone who isn't paying for reach. And then they turn around and make it ever harder to do even that in a useful way. The result of all this is that there are definitely considerably more people who would be interested in this project than actually see any of my posts about it. And that's why I have a small favor to ask you. Tell your friends about the crowdfunded translation project. Share the completed translations, link the Patreon and the Facebook pages. All those links are in the description. Let people know that this project exists and what it's all about. Let them know that I want to hear their ideas for future crowdfunded translation projects at crowdfunded_translations@elisehendrick.com. And if you've got any ideas, I'd love to hear them. Ultimately, the crowdfunded translation project is for us all. The whole idea is to translate texts that have fallen through the cracks by making it economically viable for a professional translator, i.e. me, to work on them and to make the results freely available to everyone. I think that a lot of great things are coming out of the project, and even more can result from it yet. But it all depends on making the project visible to the people who might benefit from it and consider supporting it. Thank you for watching for this length of time. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that it will encourage you to get in touch with the crowdfunded translation project, look at our translations, to get in touch with, to get involved with the crowdfunded translation project. Make suggestions, read the translations, let people know that this exists. This could be a great resource, but it's been a real fucker trying to get the word out about it. So thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project. Thanks so much, and see you on the next stream. Thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project. Thanks so much, and see you on the next stream. Hey, implicit connotations. Well, I'm Elise from the Crowdfunded Translation Project, and wanted to just tell you a little bit about what that project is and give you some updates about what I've been doing with your support. The Inessa Armand project. After finishing Kalantai's social basis of the female question, I put out a call for suggestions for the next project. One of those suggestions that I received was to translate the essays and letters of Inessa Armand, Kalantai's predecessor at the Bolshevik women's section. Suppressed by Stalin and never translated into English, Armand's writings enrich our understanding of the Bolshevik women's movement in the run-up to the October Revolution and the early days of revolutionary Russia. With your support, I have been able to translate all of her extant essays and am currently raising the last $1,950 to cover the cost of translating the remainder of her extant works, which at this point is just her correspondence. If you would like to support the project, all contributions are beautiful. You'll find links in the description. The Punto Final project is a project that is really just at its inception. Punto Final, for those unfamiliar with it, i.e. likely most of the people watching this right now, was a magazine edited by Manuel Caviese Donoso that ran from 1965 to the eve of the 1973 CIA-backed coup in Chile, and then from 1989 to 2018, publishing a grand total of 894 issues. In addition to being a platform for theoretical and ideological debate, they were also a source of excellent political journalism. Their real-time analysis of political developments in Chile, the rise of the Unidad Popular, the looming coup, and the limits of electoralism has aged extremely well, and is well worth reading for anyone interested in the period. The Chilean left is sort of in a media bubble, and the Anglosphere left really doesn't do a great job of breaking that bubble and really building connections there. So the discussion that you hear in English about Chile, even in supposed left outlets, such as Jargon, often has little or nothing to do with the state of discussion amongst comrades in Chile. So this is part of my attempts to contribute to sort of breaking down that bubble and fostering some understanding of the thought amongst revolutionaries in Chile, both historically and currently. I have so far translated 7 articles, including a long read on electoralism versus armed struggle called Chile, the Ballot or the Bullet by Punto Final editor Manuel Cabiese, and currently am working on various pieces of political analysis from the eve of the electoral campaign that would bring Salvador Allende to power, or at least to government. These include discussions of electoral versus revolutionary strategy and how and to what extent these things can coexist, discussions of US imperialist interference in Chilean politics, One of the challenges of this project, since its inception, has been getting the word out. The billionaire-controlled black box algorithms that dominate our lives don't like small creators or small projects. Nor are they particularly keen on ideological viewpoints that are inconsistent with the whims of billionaires. What's more, they positively detest anyone who isn't paying for reach. And then they turn around and make it ever harder to do even that in a useful way. The result of all this is that there are definitely considerably more people who would be interested in this project than actually see any of my posts about it. And that's why I have a small favor to ask you. Tell your friends about the crowdfunded translation project. Share the completed translations, link the Patreon and the Facebook pages. All those links are in the description. Let people know that this project exists and what it's all about. Let them know that I want to hear their ideas for future crowdfunded translation projects at crowdfunded_translations@elisehendrick.com. And if you've got any ideas, I'd love to hear them. Ultimately, the crowdfunded translation project is for us all. The whole idea is to translate texts that have fallen through the cracks by making it economically viable for a professional translator, i.e. me, to work on them and to make the results freely available to everyone. I think that a lot of great things are coming out of the project, and even more can result from it yet. But it all depends on making the project visible to the people who might benefit from it and consider supporting it. Thank you for watching for this length of time. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that it will encourage you to get in touch with the crowdfunded translation project, look at our translations, to get in touch with, to get involved with the crowdfunded translation project. Make suggestions, read the translations, let people know that this exists. This could be a great resource, but it's been a real fucker trying to get the word out about it. So thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project. Thanks so much, and see you on the next stream. Thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project. Thanks so much, and see you on the next stream. Hey, implicit connotations. I'm Elise from the Crowdfunded Translation Project, and wanted to just tell you a little bit about what that project is and give you some updates about what I've been doing with your support. The Inessa Armand project. After finishing Kalantai's social basis of the female question, I put out a call for suggestions for the next project. One of those suggestions that I received was to translate the essays and letters of Inessa Armand, Kalantai's predecessor at the Bolshevik women's section. Suppressed by Stalin and never translated into English, Armand's writings enrich our understanding of the Bolshevik women's movement in the run-up to the October Revolution and the early days of revolutionary Russia. With your support, I have been able to translate all of her extant essays and am currently raising the last $1,950 to cover the cost of translating.
Hey, implicit connotations! Welcome to Hyperpolyglotting with Elise. I'm Elise, translator, writer, and editor with 20 working languages. And... that's why that wasn't displaying correctly. And this is a stream where we'd like to learn kind of all the languages, really. Let's see what we've got to talk about. I thought we might start out with some stuff that I just saw in my recommendations and was curious about. Some English as a foreign language content. This one is called Native English Speakers Never Use These 16 Phrases. And of course, whenever I see something like this, the question for me is that actually true? Because there's a lot of stuff in language learning YouTube where it's like, don't say this, never say this, and it's like, actually, those are fairly normal things to say.
Do you want to sound...
So, let's find out. This is English with Lucy. Not familiar with Lucy. Am familiar with English. So, we'll see what we've got here. I'm just going to drop the link in chat.
Natural when speaking English? Well,
I
let's
do.
say these phrases. Some of these phrases may surprise you, as they are often taught in English textbooks.
Okay. I mean, just looking at these phrases, I have to say I'm not actually seeing... Yeah, most of them are things that are pretty commonly used.
I'm going to say it. In real life, we often don't talk like in textbooks.
I mean, some of them, they're just not things that you would necessarily say because you wouldn't necessarily have occasion to say them. Some of them, okay, there's one that's just like, the English isn't great. I'm surprised it's in a textbook because it doesn't make any sense just in terms of semantics. Okay.
We are going for natural English today, the way we really speak. before we get started, one thing I think you're really going to like is I've created a fabulous PDF to go with this video. Of course, you get the phrases that we never use, but what's really valuable in this PDF is a bonus lesson. 15 phrases that native speakers use daily. Most English learners have never been taught these, and I guarantee that some of these phrases will shock you. You've probably heard them hundreds of times without even realizing what was being said. And once you know them, you will start hearing them everywhere, and more importantly...
Okay, so this, first of all, okay, so... It is specifically English we're talking about here. That explains some of these.
Than ever, so don't miss it. So, if you want this handy guide to remember essential British phrases and also what not to say, download that for free. Just click on the link in the description box or scan the QR code there.
Because like native speakers outside of Britain, I mean, in North America, do definitely say some of these. So that is an important thing to note.
Directly to your inbox. Okay, our first phrase might surprise you. It is, my name is.
That is pretty widely used, actually.
So this is often the first phrase they teach you when you learn English at school, but native speakers almost never use it to introduce themselves. It is much more common to simply say, I'm.
Yeah, I mean, true, but I wouldn't say almost never. I mean, I'm is definitely quite common. I would say probably more common, but there are plenty of situations in which you would say my name is.
I'm Lucy, and we pretty much never say I'm called. I'm called Lucy. Just sounds a bit
yeah, much less so, definitely.
Weird to me. Now, an extra tip, when we're talking on the phone, we don't use I'm Lucy in the same way.
Yeah.
Instead, we'd say, it's Lucy.
Yeah, which is interesting. I mean, when you think about that a sec, because you, in a lot of languages, you would say, I am. In English, that comes from the fact, I think, that you are starting from a position of not being, of the other person's level of knowledge of who's on the other end of the line. So, it's Lucy. It is, being impersonal. So, it starts out from this assumption that the person has absolutely no idea what's on the other end of the line. So, it's Lucy.
How funny is that?
It being
I'm
the
Lucy
phone call.
in person. Hey, it's Lucy on the phone. Our second phrase is, I would like a coffee. Now, remember, I'm not saying that this is incorrect. You will be understood, but this phrase is often...
I mean, what makes this phrase awkward, actually, it really kind of is the please. I would like, I'd like a coffee. Yeah, I mean, that is definitely something somebody might say. Not necessarily I would. Yeah, but, people certainly say that. But, yeah, probably not the most common. It's definitely, I would not put it under the never, although, that use of, if you were saying, I would like a coffee, please, that almost kind of suggests maybe that you're annoyed with the person for some reason.
As a polite way to ask for something. It's not wrong, but it can sound slightly too formal, especially if you use the long form I would like.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that actually, I wouldn't say formal. I would say it actually kind of sounds pissed off. I mean, but on the other hand, if you just say, I'd like a coffee. See, the I would like already adds a certain air of a polite request to it in the first place. But, adding please at the end like that is kind of seems like a bit much.
Instead of I'd like. If you want to sound more natural when you order coffee in a coffee shop, you can say, can I have a coffee, please? Or I'll have a coffee, please. Or the number and then the coffee.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can just say the thing you want plus please.
1 flat white, please. 2 cappuccinos, please. Again, I would like a flat white, I would like a cappuccino is not wrong. There's a more natural way to say it.
Okay, no,
Next,
okay.
we have
So far, so
I
good.
must go now. So, textbooks always teach this one, but it sounds...
Okay, yeah. Legit, that sounds like something that you would hear in, like, a fantasy novel. That's something Gandalf would say. Okay. I must go now.
quite serious in real life.
Yes.
We'd usually just say, sorry, I have to go.
Yeah, or...
Sorry,
Or, right, gotta be off, or time to make a move, or something like that.
I've got to go, or the shortest form, gotta go. Sorry, gotta go. Another very British alternative is, right, I'm off.
Yeah.
Slapping up
Or...
thighs and standing up.
Yes, very true. And there's some Facebook page that does, like, weird British things, just humor about English culture in particular, and one of them was like a challenge. It was like challenging English people not to actually manage to leave a place without slapping their knees or using the words right, off, or move, because all of those things, in fact, you can just say, you slap your knees and say, right. Oh, and that already indicates, yeah, buggering off now.
Now, in general, we actually use have to and have got to more than must. For number 4, can I go to the bathroom, please?
I mean, certainly something that people say. It's more a matter of, like, having the occasion to. This is something that you might use in fucking primary school. Or, I suppose...
Now, unless you're a child at school...
Yeah, exactly.
You don't need to ask for permission. If you're in someone's house, you can just say, do you mind if I use the toilet? Toilet is more common in British English. Bathroom is more common in American English. If you want to sound super British, the loo.
Or the bog.
I'll just pop to the loo.
Or if you want to sound extremely bourgeois, the lavatory.
Number 5 is in my country. Now you might be thinking, what is wrong with that? Nothing is
I mean, it does sound... Again, it does... There's something grand sounding about that. Tornado in Galway. Jesus. I have friends there. I hope they're okay.
technically wrong. We just don't say it.
Well, and everybody else, of course.
We pretty much always say the name of our country.
Or where I'm from. Where I'm from is a pretty common way you could say, yeah, where I'm from, this is how we do it. Where I'm from, we don't say that. We don't say that where I'm from. We say this where I'm from. Is another way.
Like, in the UK, we eat dinner earlier. Sometimes we'd also say, where I'm from,
yeah, exactly.
we eat dinner earlier. Or, most shops are closed on Sunday in Spain. Next, we have a phrase that all students use, in my opinion. Students are often taught to use this for official language.
Yeah, I mean, that's not bad. It's good if you're trying to sort of soften what you're saying. If you need something in order to just hesitate a bit before you get stuck into what you're actually saying, you know, sometimes you need a moment to actually sort of mentally prepare before you're going to express the view that you're going to have. Like, you know, in my opinion, you're an asshole. It gives you a moment to kind of mentally prepare to say the thing, as opposed to just saying, you're an asshole. I don't. In my opinion, is fairly commonly used. There are a lot of other ways you can say it, but I would not. I mean, certainly not in the nobody ever says this category.
Language exams, and it's a really good phrase for that. However, in real life, we would usually say, I think, or, very British, I reckon.
I mean, you could also say things like, if you ask me, or here's what I would say, for example. But, I mean, again, it's like, yeah, and I reckon, absolutely. But yeah, also Australia, they use that a lot. But it's definitely, I would not put that in the never use category. Like, you're not going to sound too weird if you say, in my opinion. Though it does depend. Like, if you're having pizza and somebody says, so how do you like yours? And you go, in my opinion, it's quite good. That'll sound a bit weird. But if you're having like some sort of exchange of, social and political and philosophical views and stuff like that, it's not bad. Or if you've been asked to express an opinion on something you're worried about expressing an opinion about, perhaps because you feel like your opinion is going to expose you to consequences you don't necessarily want, or you're trying to soften a blow, then in my opinion, as a way of sort of saying, this is just my opinion. I'm not saying definitely don't do this. This is just my opinion, kind of thing. So you can do that. It's definitely less common, and it has specific use cases. Let me put it that way.
I use this all the time as a more informal alternative to think. Number 7. Imagine you walk into a restaurant and ask for a table. You say, we are 4 people.
Yeah, okay, that is absolutely that you don't say that. That is definitely in the nobody says that. I mean, that's sort of very poetic, actually. We are 4 people.
Then you hear the person behind you say, a table for 4, please.
Yes, that it would be the normal way. In fact, I can't think of a single situation outside of poetry where you would ever say, we are a number of people.
In English, we don't tend to use we are to say how many people there are. In a restaurant, a table for 4, you can also say, there are 4 of us.
Yeah, I was just about to say that, actually. So yeah, I mean, definitely not wrong to put that in the never use category. In colloquial speech, I don't think I have ever heard it in my life in any English-speaking place.
To give a number in general. Next, we have I enjoy a lot.
Yeah, I mean, this is just wrong. You can't just, I enjoy a lot. There needs to be an object. I enjoy this a lot. I enjoy playing chess a lot. I enjoy excessively hoppy beer a lot. Or something like that. I enjoy a lot actually sounds directly translated.
This one is actually incorrect. Enjoy takes an object, so we can't say...
This is incidentally an example. I sometimes talk about this when we're talking about comprehensible input and language acquisition and stuff like that, that there are examples of things that native speakers, mistakes native speakers are never taught not to make and never make. This is an example of one of those. Most people will never give any thought to it, but they will never use enjoy. Most like native English speakers, unless they've been heavily influenced by other languages to the extent and that there's like what's called interference, are never going to say, I enjoy a lot. It would never occur to them to say, I enjoy a lot. And nobody has to teach them not to say it. Because our entire knowledge of enjoy in English says this takes an object. There is a missing, if we were talking in like computer programming language, there's a syntax error, it's missing an essential argument. The argument being the thing you enjoy.
Enjoy a lot. We need to say, I enjoy it a lot.
Or I am enjoying myself a lot. Although, I don't know if I'd use a lot there. I guess you could use a lot there. I'm enjoying myself. I'm really enjoying myself, perhaps. I will say there's one situation in which I could see I enjoy a lot. And it is not a lot to modify it. You see, in the default assumption here is I enjoy a lot, as in a lot is a way of modifying enjoy and saying that I really enjoy whatever. But if somebody's saying how much, how much of something do you enjoy? I enjoy a little bit of pecorino romano on my pasta. Personally, I enjoy a lot. There, a lot is a quantity of a thing that is, an implied object. And that's kind of okay. You wouldn't hear it a whole lot. Again, very specific use case going on. But other than that, this is definitely in the never category. But it is a common thing you will hear from non-native speakers of English who come from certain language backgrounds where this is an entirely acceptable way of using the word that they would normally translate enjoy as.
A lot is also incorrect. We need an object like it.
Yeah, again, same thing I just said. The difference is, it is acceptable in the context where a lot refers to a quantity of a thing that you like. But if a lot is modifying like, and saying, that you really like it, you like it very much, then you need an explicit object. I like a lot. The question immediately is a lot of what?
This next one is an example of what can happen when students overuse idioms. We have kick the bucket.
Definitely more of a North American thing, although even there, I think we've kind of moved past it. You don't hear it that much.
And this is a really informal term for when someone dies.
Yes.
And
yeah, if you're the fucking medical examiner doing a formal identification, you would not say this. I'm afraid that he's kicked the bucket. Yeah, that would not work.
We only use it in very specific situations because it can be considered disrespectful.
Yes, and like, for example, Margaret Thatcher's kicked the bucket. There it's acceptable because disrespectful is the normal way to talk about Margaret Thatcher. When Tony Blair kicks it, that'll be a totally okay way. When Keir Starmer kicks the bucket, it will be a totally normal way of saying it, or cocks it.
You would only use
pops the clogs
if you're trying to be funny. In general, we would usually say that someone has passed away. Sometimes we just say passed, or simply died. Number 10 is a term of endearment.
Again, in the case of, if you want something more formal, in the case of, say, a figure like Margaret Thatcher, you say that she graced us with her absence.
It's dear. Now, of course, we still use this in letters and emails, for example, Dear Alice, but nowadays we don't really call people dear when talking.
Unless you're actually trying to be condescending. If you call somebody dear in most settings in English, you can do it. It is like linguistically within the parameters of things you can do with English. that are intelligible and have a clear meaning that people will assign to them. It's just that the meaning will get you smacked. If you say, I mean, like, that is something assholes will say to servers. Hey, dear, can you get me another cup of coffee? Like, and you would not want to drink the coffee that you would get there. There will be something you don't want in it.
Talking to them. I've heard many students use this, and it can sound either too forward or a little bit outdated.
Yes, I mean, it's the sort of thing that can creep into your speech if you watch too many BBC costume dramas. Because, like, you know, anything that's said in, like, Victorian times or something like that is full of that sort of thing. Oh, dear, dear Alice. When will you ever learn? Yeah, exactly. Hey, Atta. Yeah, when somebody... God, bless your heart in the South is, like, practically fighting words.
We do use terms of endearment like mate, pal, or love.
Pal, I don't know. Pal, I have to disagree with her on. Because pal, and now I'm speaking specifically of, like, of Britain here. You hear pal, you're almost certainly, it's coming from somebody you almost certainly ought to keep a distance from, because it sounds like there may be a fight in the offing. It may be about to kick off. You know, it's like, hey, pal, what you doing over there, pal? You know, pal is not a thing that is not an affectionate term. That is an endearment you use with somebody whose ass you might be wanting to kick. Love, yeah, definitely. Pet in the Northeast.
With close friends.
Oh, I'm not bad. How about you?
Sometimes dear, if said with the wrong tone of voice, can sound a little bit sarcastic. Yes, dear.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, love and mate are definitely, those aren't limited to close friends. Like, those are like random people on the street. Yeah, you will hear those. You know, North American English doesn't do as much of this. Doesn't actually add any kind of form of address. Yeah, a lot of the time when dealing with just random people. But in Britain, you hear you get mate a lot. Yeah, could I get a packet of Rizzlers, please, mate? Love, would you happen to know where the next taxi rank is? You know, you definitely use those in like just for random people. But pal is there's an ass kicking in the offing.
Yeah, can sound a little bit demeaning, patronizing. Yeah, dear can sound a bit patronizing.
Yeah.
I receive messages all the time calling me dear, and obviously I don't take it that way, but...
Yeah, I mean, there are, like, lots of languages where they use endearments just very normally, in a very friendly sort of a way, that would translate as dear if you would look them up, like habibi. Like, in Arabic, people use habibi all the time. Yeah, you know, it doesn't mean, it's a very general term of affection. You look that up, and it's gonna say dear, or my dear, and if you say that, it does not sound good.
It's just one to bear in mind. I'm referring to British English here. It could be very common in other areas. Number 11 is I'm concentrated on my studies.
Yeah, I mean, the issue is really it should be concentrating. You wouldn't say I'm concentrated. Yeah, I mean, this is one where actually I think it's right to say never. See, I'm watching this in part because whenever I see something, it's like, people never say this. Don't stop saying, you know, for a while I got all these recommendations like, stop saying gracias. Why? Porque will. Like, that's what people say. And it's like, oh, and what it really is here are some synonyms. Here are some other common colloquial synonyms that people also use. But they always say it in terms of, like, stop saying this. Nobody ever says this. And a lot of the time, it's stuff that people say all the time. Here it's a bit more of a mixed bag. Some of these things are definitely uncommon. Some of them are downright wrong. Like, people just would not say them. It wouldn't occur to a native speaker to say them. Some of them are a bit rare, and some of them have very specific use cases. But there are a couple that definitely are just, you wouldn't say it. I'm concentrated on my studies. The verb ending is what causes problems here.
Now, when we use the adjective concentrated, we're often talking about orange juice.
Yes.
Concentrated orange juice. We would usually choose a different adjective here.
I'm congealed on my studies.
And notice that this has 2 syllables, not 3. Focused. I'm focused on...
if you have a reason that you specifically want to say "ed" at the end of it, yeah, focused works. But you can also just say, I'm concentrating on my studies.
On my studies. He's focused on his work right now. However, you can use to concentrate as a verb.
Yeah.
As in, quiet. He's trying to concentrate. Or, shh, I'm concentrating. I've put a bit more information about this in the PDF that goes with this video. The link is in the description. Next, we have you're welcome. If we say this when...
I mean, that is not a nobody ever says it. This is more a, there are lots of other things people also say.
Someone says thank you, it can sound quite formal.
It can, true.
Instead, we usually say, no problem, or, of course, thanks for printing off that document, of course. Okay.
Oh yeah, or no worries.
Now, for number 13, don't say going to swim or going to cycle.
Well, here I would say it depends on what you mean, which is another thing, because if you're saying I'm going to swim tomorrow, and what you mean is you're not going someplace, going is being used there as a way of saying a thing that's going to happen in the near future. Going to swim as in I'm going to eat something now. Then I think that's actually okay. But if you're saying I'm going if the idea is that you're going someplace for the purpose of swimming, then you would say go swimming. And it's really quite odd when you think about it, because that does not generalize as much as you would expect it to. Like, you can, you can't, okay, I'm going to go cycling, as in I'm going to go someplace for cycling, to do some cycling. But you can't say I'm going to go eating. I'm going to go eating tomorrow, as in I'm going to go to a specific place and eat things. That does not work. Which is one of those weird things. And it's one of those things, again, native speakers don't really think about. And can't necessarily even tell you why something is wrong. Because if you try to figure out the generalization that's going on, try to generalize the rule, the rule doesn't really work either. I can't tell you actually offhand why to go swimming is fine, as in to go someplace and then swim there. For, go someplace for the purpose of swimming there. But I'm gonna go eating is wrong. I just know that they are. Like, I'm gonna go eating just sounds weird.
Try using the ing form to refer to activities in general. I'm going swimming tomorrow. I'm going cycling tomorrow.
I mean, you can even say, I'm going to go swimming. I'm going to go cycling.
You might use to swim or to cycle if we're doing something specific. For example, he's going to swim 10 kilometers for charity tomorrow. Or they're going to cycle to the pub instead of walking.
Well, it's something they don't value their bikes much.
Continuing with the sporty theme, next we have to practice a sport. I often hear this from students who transfer it from their mother tongue.
Well, what do we mean by practice? Like, if you're talking, I mean, this is another one of these where it really depends on the use case. Because, like, for example, if you're going to have training in a sport, I'm practicing archery, meaning you are engaging in archery-related activities in order to get better at it for the purpose of competing, for example. Then that works. I'm practicing football. I have football practice tomorrow. Things like that. That actually does kind of work. But if you're saying I practice as in I do this thing, I do this sport, I practice football, no. I mean, the things that you practice in English in that sense don't tend to be sports. I practice law, or I practice medicine. Why exactly in those particular cases we're practicing and not just doing the thing, I'm not entirely certain. English has a lot of weirdness.
But it just doesn't sound natural in English. We use the word do when talking about a sport in general, or play a sport or sports. I'm going to do some sport at the weekend. I don't play any team sports. Now, after doing...
Oh, yeah, but I mean, let's say you're going to practice... let's say you've got a cricket match coming up. And your team meets to practice. You could say you're practicing cricket. But you're practicing cricket because you play cricket. And you're going to play cricket against somebody on a specific future date. So this is another sort of depends on what you mean kind of situation.
Sport. My English friends wouldn't ask, do you want to drink a coffee?
What else would I do with it? Do you want to drink a coffee? Well, mate, I tried putting it in my ear and it really didn't work out.
To make invitations like this, we usually say, do you want to have a coffee?
Or just fancy a coffee. How about a coffee? Let's get a coffee. Have, or you can, in Britain and Ireland, you can say fancy.
Get a coffee, or informally, grab a coffee. I also hear some students ask, do you want to take a coffee? And again, this is not something we would say. That
is definitely... Yeah, that's very Spanish pilled. Like, tomar un cafecito. Yeah, you take a lot of things. In Spanish, you take a lot of drinks.
it's normally a translation of how students would say it in their mother tongue.
Aye.
However, we can use take when asking if someone accepts something with their food or drink.
Yeah, do you take cream? Do you take milk and sugar?
Do you take sugar in your coffee? 16, finally we have goodbye. Again, this is one of the first words.
That indicates that this is a major parting. Like you're unlikely to see each other again. Yeah. And in Italian, actually, the Romance languages generally like to take beverages. Je vais prendre un café.
Words you learn in English, but we don't tend to use it as often as you'd think. We're more likely to say bye, see you later,
Ta-ra.
see you. We often say bye-bye to children. I like it though when adults say it to each other. It sounds really innocent.
People say it to animals as well.
Bye-bye. Okay, before we say bye-bye, let's do a short quiz to see how...
Okay. So, on the whole, most of these things are things that have specific use cases. A lot, the never say is very much a clickbaity sort of a thing. There were definitely some things in here that you simply would not say, that native speakers definitely would. I enjoy a lot. Although even there is a very specific use case where it would work. If a lot is a quantity of a thing you are enjoying that is implied because we're talking about the thing and everybody knows what the subject is, then you could say I enjoy a lot as opposed to I enjoy a little, because we all know what it's a lot of or a little of, and then then that does work. But, you know, the way a lot of people will use this, because their native language allows this sort of a phrase where you're saying I really enjoy something, you know, it is saying expressing the degree of your enjoyment, then that doesn't work. Then that doesn't work. That just sounds directly translated and not necessarily well.
How much you remember. How can we say these phrases more naturally? 1. I need to practice some sport next weekend.
Well, if you're saying, if it's vague, like practice some sport, I mean, that's an interesting usage. I mean, that's just wrong. But if you say, I need to practice my cricket next weekend, or a specific skill within a sport, I need to practice batting, I need to practice bowling, I need to practice saving boundaries, or something like that. I need to practice 11-meter kicks, penalty kicks.
2. I feel very concentrated on my running right now.
Okay, that's a strange way of saying that in the first place. You feel really... I mean, it's almost concentrated is the least of it. Because, like, you feel very concentrated on your running. Like, you're not sure you are?
I enjoy a lot.
Okay, so that was English with Lucy. Overall, I mean, not bad. Overall, I mean, there were some things where it was definitely saying too much to say that nobody ever says it. But there were definitely quite a few that where, yeah, that is true. So, okay, now I'm quite curious. We have this is Matt versus the world. Your English addiction is killing your Japanese. And that's a weird use of the word addiction, I will say.
And so I think it's...
I don't know what it is. There's something about, like, the way the angle that he shows himself at, and the hat and stuff, and just sort of the overall kind of shape, that he always kind of reminds me somehow of, you know, the blonde woman yells at cat meme? Something about him just reminds me of the cat. Just visually, even though actually he doesn't look a thing like the cat. I can't explain it. There's some weird geometrical thing going on, and so I always think of the cat from the woman yells at cat meme.
It would be really helpful. Just put your foot down and make the decision. I'm only going to watch Korean content. And if you make that decision, you just put your foot down and decide. It makes it a lot easier to stop doing that comparison. And it's that comparison itself that's causing all of the content. And the we watch first. I find surprisingly that
now that I think of it, I have no idea why. And it isn't like, at this angle, this camera angle, it's gone. But there's a certain camera angle that puts his head in a particular place, and it is straight on. Stop being Ratchet Lady.
spend 30 hours per week on YouTube and Instagram alone, according to screen time stats. A lot of passive listening to long-form English commentary and doom scrolling. These are mostly subconscious, coping, distracting behaviors that default to English. And unfortunately, the topics I'm interested in are much better in English. Geopolitics, language learning, comedy.
Interesting.
Do you have any tips to change the default coping content to the target language?
Yeah, okay, this is a really good question. And one of the really challenging things when it comes to this sort of thing. First of all, sometimes there just really isn't great content on a particular subject. There isn't a lot of it anyway, available in a particular language. But the other thing is, crafting search terms that will actually get you the kind of stuff you want in your target language is a whole thing in and of itself. Oh, I have no idea. I only know this from the meme. I don't know what the woman yells at the cat. I just know that the cat looks very smug somehow. The cat looks like he got the better of her.
Vlogs are that I find a lot of content I get fed in my Korean-only YouTube account to be uninteresting. Couple vlogs, interviewing cooked bachelors, comedians interviewing idols, Korean looks maxing.
Oh God. Of course, all the worst shit eventually gets exported from the U.S. No, it's a white cat, I think. So there's Korean looks maxing. Of course there is. I don't know if anyone saw this. Probably, and nobody else here watches French political YouTube. But there's this creator called Cassandre, and I follow him. And he has a video because, speaking of looks maxing, reminded because that dickhead clavicular, he went to Paris for Fashion Week, and he went around trying to get laid, and came to the conclusion that all French women are lesbians because nobody was interested. And it is a hilarious video, and great for, great French comprehensible input, although they do, they talk rather fast, so you'd have to at least be intermediate. You'd have to be used to hearing French. You certainly learn a lot of words like draguer, which is like to go on the pull, to try to pick somebody up.
Etc. I tried a YouTube channel that does geopolitical
words associated with being unsuccessful at that.
Is good, and every time I hear a string of transliterated English proper nouns, I feel like what I'm doing is silly. I think a lot of people feel something very similar.
I mean, I can kind of understand that. You feel you feel like you're actually not hearing the language. You get this sort of purism a lot in amongst like Japanese learners as well, where they're like, oh, they don't want to use a lot of anglicisms. It's like, but that's how people talk. You know, yes, you can say, I don't know, kenshikubutsu instead of biru. That schmuck. That guy. He went to try to look max his way through Paris, trying to just pick up random women in Paris on stream, and none of them wanted anything to do with it. He just got completely rejected by all of France, really. It was just a unanimous thing.
Including me, this is something that I struggle with too. So, first of all, it sounds like you've barely gone past the first layer of Korean YouTube.
Yeah.
And
this is the stuff that show up. They're very generic recs.
Layer of YouTube, for most people, is always going to suck. Like, imagine if you just made a brand new English YouTube account. What you would get recommended at first was, like, generic English news that you probably don't care about, like Mr. Beast related content.
Puke. It's puke maxing.
Content, celebrity news, garbage. Some people are going to like that stuff, but there's a good chance that if you're finding all these types of content you're describing as like not what you're interested in, there's a good chance that even on default English YouTube you wouldn't find that interesting either. So you have to...
Yeah, I mean, this is where search terms really come into it. Because you've got to know, first of all, you got to know what you want. And then you've got to know how what you want is actually talked about in your target language. And it may not be with the words that you would, the sort of words that you would use to turn it up in a search in English, for example.
To kind of dig to find the content that you actually like.
Yeah.
So what I think about it is you don't have to actually do this. You can do this as a thought experiment. But if you go and get on a train in Korea, there's going to be Korean people of all walks of life.
No, I'd love to see all those masks. That is so nice to see. And decent quality masks, too. God.
Riding that train. And so there are going to be smart,
Som kan gå
educated
på.
adult men watching YouTube. What are they going to be watching, right? Are they going to be watching these looks masks?
I mean, I don't know that I would want to just, like, base my viewing on what random middle-aged people on the public transport are watching. Look. I mean, this is where it's useful and important if you really want to get anywhere in the language and, have places to talk and have the kind of conversations with the kind of people you want to talk to in the language to actually begin expanding your social circle, at least online, if that's the, if you're not in a place where you can do this necessarily easily in person, so that you can find people who are Korean native speakers, for example, who are into the sort of things you actually care about, and find out what they watch. Because if you do, because then you're more likely to get the kind of stuff that you actually care about. Because, some random middle-aged dude on the metro or whatever is not necessarily going to be watching anything that you actually care about.
Videos and like idols doing new workouts. Some of them will, but probably not. They're probably going to be watching some kind of intellectual content where people talking about intellectually stimulating ideas. You just have to go and find what those are, because that's not going to be the default first thing that YouTube recommends to you. And so you have to go and find out what those are. You shouldn't just try to replicate your English interests in Japanese.
I mean, you can, depending on what those interests are, you can probably get reasonably far with that. And this is where actually following people who post in your target language about the things you care about on other kinds of social media is useful. Because, like, if you're looking for people who are involved in, if you're, like, politically minded and you want, people who are involved in, say, anti-racist activism and Japanese is the language, then you find those people on, Facebook or Twitter or Line or, any of the SNS, social networking sites. And you find out then what what creators they're watching. You finding people who actually share your interests in the target language and finding out what they're watching is probably your best bet for content.
You should try to kind of find new interests that are unique to the target language. For me, like, this is some of, like I mentioned, I spent a lot of time watching Japanese YouTube this week when I was sick in bed. And a lot of what I was watching is stuff that I wouldn't watch in English, but I still really like. For example, I have an interest in Japanese literature. I don't really like reading Japanese literature that much, but I like the concepts of Japanese literature. Like,
I'm not laughing at him, I'm laughing at the phrase. Because it just reminds me of something George Bush Sr. said during the 1988 campaign that has stayed with me. He was in the campaign against Dukakis. He was asked, do you have anything positive? Is there anything you like about your opponent? And George Bush Sr. said, I have great respect. That actually sounds like George Bush Jr. He said, I have great respect for the concept of the Dukakis family. Like, just in the abstract, I think, he thinks it's great that there is such a thing as a Dukakis family. I love the concept of Japanese literature. Just sounds like, it's great that they have literature. I just don't want to read it.
Intellectual curiosity of, like, what do the most famous and, like, well-regarded Japanese authors write about? What are the topics that have, like, persisted throughout time? What did they do that made them so famous? Like, what did they do with the Japanese language that was unique? For example, I always really liked Murakami Haruki. I haven't really read him.
Yes. He writes interesting stuff. I've also read very little. I haven't read any of his novels. I really ought to. He's kind of on I have this whole list of books that I feel that I really would be interested in and that I really kind of ought to know, just as sort of general education. and haven't gotten around to because there's just so much other stuff. And I've been taking those off recently fairly well. I finally got down to reading Il nome della rosa by Umberto Eco, which is really good. If you like a really long and extremely philosophical, sort of detective novel set in a medieval monastery, which I actually enjoy medievalism. Medieval literature is actually a real hoot a lot of the time. So that was actually right up my street, but I had been meaning to, I think I bought a copy of that on holiday 15 years ago in English because it was just the only version at the bookshop. It was just a little, bookshop on the beach kind of thing. They didn't have a lot of untranslated literature there. But I found the ebook of it in Italian, and had the Italian Audible book, and I listened to that for much of the last couple of months. But yeah, so Murakami Haruki is also one of the people on my list. Natsume Souseki I have actually read now, some actually also with the audiobook. It's a thing I do at night to kind of get me into a sleeping mood. And Edogawa Rampo and his weirdness, his stories are weird as fuck. Also is somewhat ticked off the list. I have at the very least made an entree into their work.
Long time, although watching these videos have made me want to try reading him again for the first time in many years. I stumbled across a lot of videos of Japanese people talking about Murakami Haruki and discussing what makes him unique and how the topics that he wrote about changed throughout his career. There's lots of people analyzing Murakami Haruki in English, but those people haven't actually read his original writing.
Yeah.
And part of what I found so fascinating was the specific way he used the Japanese language.
Yeah, exactly.
Japanese people that actually read it in the original.
I mean, and Japanese literary translation in either direction, that is hard. Because what you can do with Japanese if you want to get creative and interesting with it, and what you can do with English, these are very different things. Because the languages have different, they have a different way of forming phrases and forming expressions and things, and so doing the same thing in both languages and getting the same effect is going to be rare.
Compare it to other literature written in Japanese and hear them talk about their analysis of it, especially people that do this for a living and can do that at the highest level. Listening to that was really fascinating for me. Some of the analyses I heard of Murakami Haruki, I'd never thought about those perspectives myself. And another example is, overall, I'm not the biggest fan in the world of Japanese comedy, but Japanese comedy is actually really broad. And one of the ones that's pretty easy to get into is the subgenre called ogiri, which is basically a kind of competitive form of Japanese comedy where, I won't go into it too much, but basically someone comes up with a topic, kind of like a question or a fill-in-the-blank type of sentence.
Oh, wow. So this is a little bit like Have I Got News for You, or Whose Line Is It Anyway?
And then a bunch of comedians compete to try to see who can fill in the blank or answer the question in the funniest way possible. And they'll do this...
Okay, I did not know about this genre. I will have to check that out.
Back to back. So they'll try to be how many unique answers can you squeeze out of one question or one fill in the blank? It's nothing like American comedy, but it's still pretty funny.
Yeah, it is
the
actually...
That you spend
I mean, there are British shows that are like this. Whose Line Is It Anyway, again, and Have I Got News for You are two good examples where this is actually how it works. You have this, it's a comedy panel show, and so somebody brings up a headline and then everybody riffs on it for a few minutes.
In the language, the more you discover these unique things that you like, and then you become invested in it. It kind of takes an upfront investment to kickstart this process.
Yeah, actually, the more invested in it you are, the easier it is to do all of these things.
Finding the things that you're going to like, that are totally new, and going and uncovering the content that's going to appeal to you. It's probably not just going to be the default content that shows up as the first thing. I think spending a little bit more time to dig beneath the surface to find the stuff that you're going to like. The other thing is, if you're learning this language, you should extract joy from the language itself, separate from the content.
Yeah. I mean, and this is a thing that actually the more used to the language you get, the easier it is to do in a lot of ways. Because then you can actually, once you understand the sort of foundational way that the language functions, then it is easier to see when somebody is doing something really cool with it. Because if you are unfamiliar with the way the language just generally works, then you aren't necessarily going to realize when somebody's doing something unique. You may just think that that's just a thing people say.
Me personally, right now I'm trying to improve my Japanese a little bit, so when I hear a well-formed sentence in Japanese, it inherently brings me joy.
Yeah.
Just two sentences that really stuck out in my mind when I was listening to Japanese YouTube this week. Someone was talking about social media and how social media algorithms are basically optimized for engagement. And that's how we say it in English, right? That's a common way to hear it. Social media algorithms are basically just, they're optimizing for engagement, right? But what he said is, content on social media, omoshiroi jun ni narabu. That's the specific expression.
Yes. This literally means it lines up in order of fun or interestingness.
He used, which literally means, narabu means to basically to line up and get in line. So you're basically saying like posts on social media get in line in order of how omoshiroi they are, which basically means like how entertaining they are.
Yeah.
And that's just like a way to conceptually frame the same basic idea in a way that I never would have thought of.
Yeah, because Japanese allows way more options in terms of plugging words into each other. Like, omoshiroi jun. You translate that literally, it's like funny order or entertaining order. But that doesn't work in English, because the order can't be entertaining. But in Japanese, that isn't actually automatically understood to be modifying the order. The word order. It's stating a characteristic plus order means the order it is sequenced in accordance with with that stated characteristic. You can make very concise sentences in Japanese with these sorts of phrase structures.
I was like, oh, that's a really good expression. Like, I could use that myself.
Yeah.
I got a little joy just hearing that creative use of Japanese.
Yes, I agree with him totally on this. And we're going to take a little bio break real quick. I will be back in just a couple of minutes.
Hey, implicit connotations. I'm Elise from the Crowdfunded Translation Project, and wanted to just tell you a little bit about what that project is and give you some updates about what I've been doing with your support. The Inessa Armand project. After finishing Kalantai's social basis of the female question, I put out a call for suggestions for the next project. One of those suggestions that I received was to translate the essays and letters of Inessa Armand, Kalantai's predecessor at the Bolshevik Women's section. Suppressed by Stalin and never translated into English, Armand's writings enrich our understanding of the Bolshevik women's movement in the run-up to the October Revolution and the early days of revolutionary Russia. With your support, I have been able to translate all of her extant essays and am currently raising the last $1,950 to cover the cost of translating the remainder of her extant works, which at this point is just her correspondence. If you would like to support the project, all contributions are beautiful. You'll find links in the description. The Punto Final project is a project that is really just at its inception. Punto Final, for those unfamiliar with it, i.e. likely most of the people watching this right now, was a magazine edited by Manuel Caviese Donoso that ran from 1965 to the eve of the 1973 CIA-backed coup in Chile, and then from 1989 to 2018, publishing a grand total of 894 issues. In addition to being a platform for theoretical and ideological debate, they were also a source of excellent political journalism. Their real-time analysis of political developments in Chile, the rise of the Unidad Popular, the looming coup, and the limits of electoralism has aged extremely well, and is well worth reading for anyone interested in the period. The Chilean left is sort of in a media bubble, and the Anglosphere left really doesn't do a great job of breaking that bubble and really building connections there. So the discussion that you hear in English about Chile, even in supposed left outlets, such as Jacobin, often has little or nothing to do with the state of discussion amongst comrades in Chile. So this is part of my attempts to contribute to sort of breaking down that bubble and fostering some understanding of the thought amongst revolutionaries in Chile, both historically and currently. I have so far translated 7 articles, including a long read on electoralism versus armed struggle called Chile, the Ballot or the Bullet by Punto Final editor Manuel Caviese, and currently am working on various pieces of political analysis from the eve of the electoral campaign that would bring Salvador Allende to power, or at least to government. These include discussions of electoral versus revolutionary strategy and how and to what extent these things can coexist, discussions of US imperialist interference in Chilean politics, One of the challenges of this project, since its inception, has been getting the word out. The billionaire-controlled black box algorithms that dominate our lives don't like small creators or small projects. Nor are they particularly keen on ideological viewpoints that are inconsistent with the whims of billionaires. What's more, they positively detest anyone who isn't paying for reach. And then they turn around and make it ever harder to do even that in a useful way. The result of all this is that there are definitely considerably more people who would be interested in this project than actually see any of my posts about it. And that's why I have a small favor to ask you. Tell your friends about the crowdfunded translation project. Share the completed translations, link the Patreon and the Facebook pages. All those links are in the description. Let people know that this project exists and what it's all about. Let them know that I want to hear their ideas for future crowdfunded translation projects at crowdfunded_translations@elisehendrick.com. And if you've got any ideas, I'd love to hear them. Ultimately, the crowdfunded translation project is for us all. The whole idea is to translate texts that have fallen through the cracks by making it economically viable for a professional translator, i.e. me, to work on them and to make the results freely available to everyone. I think that a lot of great things are coming out of the project, and even more can result from it yet. But it all depends on making the project visible to the people who might benefit from it and consider supporting it. Thank you for watching for this length of time. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that it will encourage you to get in touch with the crowdfunded translation project, look at our translations, to get in touch with, to get involved with the crowdfunded translation project. Make suggestions, read the translations, let people know that this exists. This could be a great resource, but it's been a real fucker trying to get the word out about it. So thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like or and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project. Thanks so much, and see you on the next stream. Thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like, and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project.
And I'm back with a nice cup of tea on a day that just kind of looks like you need a cup of tea for it. Okay, so let's just carry on with this. This is interesting.
But still natural use of Japanese. Another one is in the same video that I just talked about, Ogiri, like Matsumoto Hitoshi, which is like one of the most famous comedians in Japan, was making fun of the other guy who's really bad at this particular form of comedy. And he used this expression that I just thought was so funny.
Thank you, Ata. So, if there was an animal that specifically liked ogiri, they wouldn't let you into the herd.
Which is like a really ridiculous thing to say, but he was like, if there was an animal that liked comedy, this animal wouldn't go anywhere near you. He's basically just saying, like, you're not funny. It's more funny in Japanese because nani nani zuki no dobutsu is like kind of something you would say of like, this dog loves this type of meat or something, right? So
yeah.
if he smells this type of meat, he's naturally going to go towards you. But just framing it in this thing of like, yeah, if there was an animal whose favorite thing was this particular form of comedy, then this animal wouldn't go anywhere near you because you're not funny. You can't really translate the humor, but it's just like a super creative way of like, how would you even think to say that?
Yeah, I mean, actually, as a translator, I'm immediately thinking about how would I do that. So, もし大喜利好きの動物がいたら、陣内の男には寄っていかないとか。So. Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that longer.
I inherently get joy about that because, first of all, like speaking this language, I'm viewing it almost like a sport that I participate in myself. If you care about and appreciate the language, then listening to articulate native speakers should feel like you're basically watching Olympic athletes compete in your favorite sport.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and sometimes people will just come up with a way of saying things you didn't know existed. It's like, yeah, and you immediately see exactly where they're going with it, as in this example with Matsumoto Hitoshi. And you can immediately see use cases for it, and you didn't really have a particular phrase, a go-to phrase for this. I mean, yeah.
On one hand, you can just marvel at the greatness, and there's a certain joy that comes from that. And there's the perspective of like taking notes in your head and being like, oh, I can use that move. You're like studying them, right? Of like, that's a really good move. I'm going to use that myself. And
yeah.
Thinking about what you could incorporate into your own speech and things like that. And that.
Yeah, I mean, and not just necessarily at the, literal level of saying, nani nani zuki no, nani nani zuki na doubutsu ga itara, jinnai ni wa yotte ikanai toka. Not just, but there's, you get, for example, this is especially in the case of omoshiroi jun ni narabu. There is a structure there that you can use in all sorts of other ways. Not necessarily with narabu, not necessarily with omoshiroi, but you could take that in all sorts of directions once you have it. It's like netcat.
Additional subjective element of value beyond just the content itself. And I don't get this from English because I don't try to get better at English or learn English. So I don't really care as much. So this is a whole extra...
See, I'm a writer, amongst other things, so I'm always taking notes. I'm always, I'm taking notes either because I hear something that would be a worthwhile thing to incorporate into dialogue I'm writing, or somebody just has a turn of phrase and it's like, oh, that's really good. That I have to use that someplace. So I'm kind of always on when it comes to that kind of thing.
Joy that I get just from the Japanese content. And the other thing here is I think there's this mental block that I know I've experienced as well where you specifically mentioned that hearing the translated English proper nouns makes you feel silly. Where you're just kind of like, okay, I'm basically listening to something that's getting translated into the target language. The information has a superior form in English. The Japanese version or the Korean version is like a translated or not as high quality presentation of the same information. And
yeah, you gotta just get used to the fact that that's part of it.
And I understand it less, so I'm just having an inferior experience. I could go watch first-class content in English and like enjoy it all the way and understand it effortlessly, or I could struggle to understand this kind of shittier version of it.
아직 세상에 알려지지 않은 버그.
And so,
and I don't know, being a translator, I actually find this sort of thing specifically interesting because you see how other translators do a certain thing that you might not immediately have a good idea about.
Then you just feel like, this is stupid. Why am I watching this inferior version? But the thing is, you're not just trying to absorb snippets of information. If all you cared about is...
Although in that particular case, the translation they're using for 0-day vulnerabilities, I'm curious whether that would in fact be because 0-day vulnerability is a technical term. And the way they said that in Korean was just bugs that are not known to the world. Bugs that are unknown to the world. 버그 is bug. 세상에 알려지지 않은 버그. But, I mean, that isn't necessarily the technical terminology you would use. That seems more like an explanation of what it means. So now I'm kind of curious what the technical term would be for 0-day. I've not really... Actually, I have one Korean language textbook on network security, but it's North Korean, so the terminology is totally different.
I need information. Then yeah, go watch the English, whatever. But like, you're trying to get better at Korean.
Like even the word, the term network security is different. In South Korea, it would be like network security. In the book that I have is called 망보안. 망, network, security, 보안, security.
That's the whole point of this whole thing, right? That's why you're here in this community, why we're talking about this. You want to be able to understand and converse yourself about these topics in Korean.
Yeah.
Watching the Korean version is what's aligned with your goals. That's what's going to make you better understanding Korean, better at talking about these topics yourself, because you're going to learn how they're going to talk about in Korean. It's going to make understanding Korean more effortless. So why would you feel silly about that? Like, you should feel silly about doing it in English when that's not what's aligned with your goals. And
yeah. Well, I mean, I think what makes people feel silly is the same impulse that leads to this sort of purism. These people want to know, like, what is the sort of purely Korean or purely Japanese way of saying a certain thing. So, because they don't want to sound like they're just using English words or whatever. But the thing is, I mean, and it's useful to have that. It's useful to have those sorts of, the way of saying it that is, like, this sort of inherent, the natively Korean way of expressing a certain thing, to have that in your back pocket. But if the way that people actually say it in Korean or Japanese or, or like Spanish or whatever is actually an English word anymore, like random, for example. Random gets used a lot as an English word in Spanish and French. If you watch the video that I was talking about with Cassandra watching cladicular not get laid in Paris and conclude that all the women in France are lesbians, which was hilarious. He actually said that because he can't imagine any other reason that nobody would want to sleep with him. He actually, Cassandra says random in French. The word random has actually done that, and you hear that in Spanish too. We on est random. So if you want to actually speak the language the way people speak the language and understand the way people speak the language, sometimes that's going to involve a lot of anglicisms. The idea is that you find out all the different ways that you can say it, what the most common way is that people do say it, and then you've got choices. And the thing is, the better you get at the language, the more stylistic choices you can make. And so all sorts of samples are good for that.
You're missing out on an opportunity to kill two birds with one stone. Your goal is to interact with Korean people. You should be consuming the same thing that they're consuming, so you're on the same page with them. So you know, like, what words do they use, like, what perspectives get presented in the content they're watching, and how do they talk about it, so that you're on the same page with them.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is really important is to stop constantly making this comparison to English. This is kind of building off this previous point as well, but when I get stuck in that mindset of, like, I could just do it in English, like, what's the point of going out of my way to try to find content that's good in Japanese?
I mean, and here, one of the things is, you may find similar, like, content expressing maybe even a similar perspective on the same subject in different languages, but it's not going to be the same content. It's not going to be the same perspective being expressed. It's not going to be expressed in the same way. So just because it's related or similar content does not mean it's the same thing.
I already know what content I like in English, and it's going to get me the information or whatever. When
Yeah.
you think about it, most of that's coming from this comparison of the English and the Japanese. This comparison is optional. You don't have to be comparing the Japanese content to the English content. You can just consume the Korean content and think about whether you're finding it interesting or not. English doesn't have to enter the picture. And so I think it can be really helpful. Just put your foot down and make the decision, I'm only going to watch Korean content. And if you make that decision...
Yeah, definitely.
You just put your foot down and decide. It makes it a lot easier to stop doing that comparison. And it's that comparison itself that's causing all of the pain and the emotional turbulence, right?
I think...
Because if all you do is watch...
I don't think it's entirely the comparison. I think it's understanding the purpose. Like, I mean, this includes the same information as something I could watch in English. Well, content isn't just information, though. If you're watching a video, listening to a podcast, reading a thing, it's not just the raw information that you're getting from it. There is more to it. There are layers. And you should try to appreciate all the layers that are there. Because there's what's being said, there's how it's being said, there's the specific perspective that this specific person is bringing to it, with the cultural context and societal context that they're bringing to it, which is not necessarily the same as what you're going to get if you're watching a video on the exact same subject from the exact same, like, philosophical perspective overall from somebody in Canada or something like that. There is something that is inherently going to be different just because it's a different person saying the thing. By watching it in Korean or Japanese or Italian or German, you're getting to hear the perspective, the expressions of this specific person.
Watch Korean content, then the question stops becoming, is this better than the English content?
Yeah, think about it as watching the person. You're not just watching French content, for example. You're watching Cassandra. You're getting Cassandra's take on things, expressed in the way Cassandra expresses it. Yes, there's, like, English language baking content, including English language pizza content. Much of it is good, but it's not Malati di Pizza. It's not that it's not that guy. Those guys, it's a couple of people, I think, behind that channel, expressing their perspectives and talking about that in their particular way, with their particular quirks and things. Think about it as experiencing not just the topic, but the person. And when you do that, that changes a lot. Because after all, that's what language is for, is we're experiencing people. It is a way that we experience people.
Becomes, is this the best Korean content I could be watching right now, or is there better Korean content? And either way, you're going to be watching Korean content. And I experienced that.
See, I mean, that perspective is good, and that is a good starting point when you haven't actually. But really, the more you think about it in a person-focused way, you're thinking about it more in the way that you think about it. Like, you don't say, if you're a native English speaker, okay, I'm going to watch some English language content right now. I want to watch an English language video about the Linux command line or computer hardware. You say, I want to see what Steve at Gamers Nexus has to say, is talking about today. Or something like that. Because you're watching, it's not just the topic. It's not just the information. It's the specific person in front of the camera and the way they talk about these things. Like, you don't just say, oh, I'm going to watch a video in English about computer hardware. You say, you specifically, you watch Gamers Nexus. Well, I do. And I recommend, if you want an entertaining channel about computer hardware and the bullshit some of these companies get up to, and good reviews and stuff like that, that's informative and funny, and, you know, it's just enjoyable. Gamers Nexus is a good one. Steve at Gamers Nexus does a good job with that stuff. But think about the way you choose content in your native language. And then think about it and start thinking about choosing content in your target language that way. Because it's at the beginning, you're just looking mostly by topic because you haven't heard of anybody. But gradually, when you start to get stuff that is related to a certain topic, you can start to think about it in terms of the specific creator, in terms of the specific people who are making this thing and the specific things that they're bringing to it. And you can start to think about this stuff the way you think about it when you're dealing with content in your native language. And I think that's really important.
This week, I kind of just decided, like I mentioned at the beginning of this workshop, that, okay, I'm going to be stuck in bed for probably multiple days in a row. At the time, I didn't have enough energy to watch, like, a proper drama. So I just decided I'm just going to watch only Japanese YouTube this whole time. And
yeah, like, for example, I mean, and this isn't just YouTube. Like, at a certain point, I did not actually know any authors of Italian detective novels. But I wanted to, I like detective novels, and I wanted to listen to something in Italian. And so I just did some searches for, like, Italian detective novels. Gialli Italiani. And then I started to come back with some authors. And I liked some. And others I found boring as shit or depressing. And so then it became not so much, oh, okay, I want Italian detective novel content. It was like, okay, I want to see something by Cristina Casarscalia. Something by Alessia Gazzola. You know, something by Maurizio De André. De Giovanni, not De André. I keep confusing with Fabrizio De André. You know, because it becomes less about, you know, this generalization of language plus content type, and it becomes more about experiencing specific, you know, what specific people bring in that language.
at least I'm going to get a bunch of immersion in. Because I decided that, I wasn't thinking about, is this better than English content I could be watching? All I thought of is like, do I want to keep watching this video in Japanese, or do I want to start watching a different video in Japanese? And I wasn't thinking about English. And when I went into that frame and I got used to it, I started enjoying it a lot more. Because comparison is the thief of joy. That's what they say, right? And when I just...
I haven't heard that, but that's not bad. I mean, in general, the more you think about these things, about content selection, the way you to think about it when you're just dealing with stuff in your native language, the better the experience is going to be and the more useful.
Japanese content for what it was, and I wasn't thinking, oh, but the English one would have even higher production value. Forget about the English content for a second. Then it's like, okay, I'm watching a video. They're talking about something I find interesting. These are thoughtful, intelligent people having an interesting discussion.
Yeah.
I'm still getting the information anyway.
And you also now, and if you like any of them particularly, you note their name. You look them up. Now it isn't just, oh, I want to see a thing in Japanese about Japanese books. It's, okay, I want to watch this guy that I saw on the Bunge Shunju panel discussion. He had some interesting takes. I want to hear his other takes. And that's a whole different thing, and that is already bringing you deeper into the universe of the language in a way that's going to be better for your language and just more interesting for you.
Also getting better at understanding this type of information in Japanese and like getting challenged.
This is going to be a highlights reel, I think, because I'm having a lot of, I'm very on at the moment. The tea helps. God, the tea really did help. But
it wasn't a problem. And
I gotta
talked about
remember to cut this thing up.
last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, but it's good to remember that this is what the Korean people are watching, and hopefully you have respect for Korean people.
Yeah, and they're not saying, okay, I would like to watch some Korean language content. They're saying, you know, I want to know what that guy has to say. Let's see what he's been doing.
Are only consuming Korean content, yet are still on the very cutting edge of whatever field they're in. And obviously that's the case. Like, Korean people and Japanese people, there's many fields where they're competing on the cutting edge or dominant in certain fields. If it's good enough for them, it should be good enough for you, especially if you're trying to learn the language, right? So I think embodying that mindset of just like, I am Korean right now, I don't watch things in English, and just enjoy the game of taking that perspective of, like, getting to be a whole different person, have a whole different perspective. It's actually pretty fun when you take that on. It's like you're stepping into an entirely different world with its own meta, and you have to invest in...
I have to say, I agree with a lot of what he's saying, but it's like that there's a humanistic aspect of it that is kind of, that I feel in this discussion is coming a little bit short. And that's kind of what I've been trying to supplement, because I think it's actually a really important part of it.
...to it before it starts giving back to you. But if you do invest, then it really does. Sometimes I fall into this place, I'm like,
I mean, yeah, all this very neoliberal, we're going to talk about investing in things, and the content is going to provide you with the return. And it's like, this isn't a criticism of Matt. Because again, I actually think what he's saying makes a lot of sense. I don't disagree with any of it, really. But it is more just the moment as a society, as a fucking species that we're in, where everything has to be talked about in these, like, economistic, marketized ways, where that is just the default mode that we talk about things. That, again, not a criticism of Matt. You find this sort of thinking all over the place. It's hard to avoid it on a certain level because it's fucking everywhere. But there's a humanistic side to these things that is really, really important, and I think actually, when it comes to the compelling aspect of input in a language, the focusing deep on the humanistic side of it, of being interested in stuff, you know, a particular person is putting out there for other people to check out, will probably get you farther and just be a more rewarding experience just personally as well.
Learning Japanese so long, I'm good enough, like, I'm so exhausted trying to get good at Japanese, then I'll feel this way. But when I'm just, like, hanging out with all the other people that are, like...
Here we go, yeah, this is the humanistic thing. Oh, I think I remember watching this, too.
Good at Japanese, me or better, and I'm like, oh, I want to take this to the next level. There's, like, always room for improvement. There's no reason to get jaded about it. There's so many things I can improve on, and I get kind of hyped about wanting to get even better at Japanese. Then it's easy to take this perspective. This is what's aligned with my goals. It's just getting me better at Japanese. So, of course, it's what I want to do. There's nothing silly about, you know, take your skills to the next level.
Okay.
Avant que cette vidéo débute...
Okay. I'm kind of curious about this. It just sort of showed up, so... and this is a channel called Linguistique. And this is called L'Afrikaans, la fausse langue des Blancs. The false language of whites, specifically white South Africans. And I'm kind of curious about it because I'm wondering which direction he's taking that in. And we don't do a lot of stuff that's in French. Let me see, what's the subtitle world look like here? Oh, okay, automatically generated French. So I will try to sort of summarize and react at the same time. Because it's about a language that I find quite interesting. Afrikaans is a neat language. I like Afrikaans. I love languages that are syncretic and actually are the attempt by marginalized and colonized people to find some sort of an interface with the dominant society. because you get, I mean, they're just always very interesting languages, and there's a whole history of struggle and resistance around them that is always very interesting. And they're often some of the most creative languages out there as well.
Je voulais vous rappeler que la boutique est encore ouverte, elle ferme d'ici quelques jours, donc c'est le dernier moment pour pouvoir acheter.
Okay, let me just drop the link in chat for linguistique.
Je vais réussir à vous le montrer. La carte, les 2 t-shirts bien sûr. Sinon vous pouvez aussi toujours me soutenir sur Tipeee. Et si jamais je fais ça, c'est pas par plaisir, c'est surtout que ce genre de sujet, comme celui que vous allez voir, ou des vidéos un peu de ce style, nécessite un financement de la part de la communauté, et quitte à financer la communauté, autant se faire plaisir avec un produit qu'on n'aura nulle part ailleurs. Je vous embête vraiment pas plus longtemps, le plus court c'est le mieux.
He's just talking about his shop. Okay. But we're about to switch into the actual topic.
Sur ce, bon visionnage. En France, beaucoup ont oublié depuis un moment déjà tous les débats qui ont pu exister autour de l'apartheid.
Okay. This is a review of the subject of apartheid, which is important. Some people may remember that there was this video that somebody suggested to me from Africa is a Country, talking about the state of African languages and how Afrikaans was the only African language that had broken out of what one of them called the folkloric mood, and pointed out that the big part of the reason for that was actually pretty fucked up. Because it had to do with white supremacists in South Africa appropriating the language, standardizing it in their image, and that gave it access to a whole bunch of state subsidies that allowed it to become a language that is also used for things like law and science and art and literature and stuff like that. Alongside English, alongside, colonial languages. And that sort of subsidy, that sort of state investment simply has not happened with almost any native African languages.
Évidemment, c'était incontournable. Avant les années 1990, l'Afrique du Sud était tristement célèbre pour son régime de ségrégation. Comme c'est actuellement le cas pour ce qui se passe en Israël à Gaza, l'Occident avait le cul entre 2 chaises et s'est retrouvé contraint sous la pression de l'autre.
Le cul entre...
Pour ce qui se passe en Israël à Gaza, l'Occident avait le cul entre 2 chaises et s'est...
Oh, that is... okay. Matt was speaking a moment ago. On the video we were just watching, about how sometimes you just run into a great expression in a language. And the one that's up here, can you see my subtitles here? Yes, okay, this is actually set up. You can see the subtitles. This is great. This is a great example. L'Occident avait le cul entre 2 chaises. Literally, the West had its ass between 2 chairs. Talking about how during the time of the apartheid regime in South Africa, much like is the case with Israel now, the West was tried to be on both sides, talked out both sides of their mouth. But in French you say that they had their ass between 2 chairs. That is good. I like that phrase.
L'essentiel de ces mouvements de contestation sont individuels ou institutionnels sans jamais que l'on trouve de grandes mesures politiques ou gouvernementales. Le Royaume-Uni s'oppose même carrément aux sanctions économiques discutées.
Yes, okay, talking about the BDS campaign against apartheid South Africa, but I want to get specifically to what we're talking about with Afrikaans. Afrikaans.
Palestinien aujourd'hui, avec des enjeux et des logiques qui ont quand même quelques coïncidences, et donc on traitait timidement, mais parfois, de cela dans la culture populaire. Qui se souvient ici que les méchants de l'Arme Fatale 2, super film.
Je ne pense pas que vous voyiez...
Okay, he's a Lethal Weapon 2 in French.
Dans la culture populaire. Qui se souvient ici que les méchants de l'Arme Fatale 2, super film.
Je ne pense pas que vous voyiez vraiment aller en Afrique du Sud. Et pourquoi?
C'était les Afrikaners blancs.
Parce que vous êtes noir.
Lethal Weapon 2 involves the South African embassy, and so in this scene, Danny Glover is pretending that he wants to get a tourist visa to go to South Africa, and the South African consular official guy goes, I don't think you really want to go to South Africa. And he goes, well, why is that? Because you're black. Parce que
Quoi
vous...
qu'il en soit, ce régime a pris fin en 1991, d'où Mandela qui sort de prison, qui devient président, etc. Et là, organisé aux États-Unis des rencontres de ces victimes, des victimes du dit génocide. Donald Trump a quant à lui annoncé sa volonté de réduire à nouveau le nombre d'immigrants américains. Il dit vouloir n'en faire rentrer que 7500.
But okay, a lot of history, a lot of important history, but not what I was hoping to really look at. Les bourgs, l'annexion britannique, la gauche au pouvoir, l'apartheid. Okay, une langue en dehors des. Okay, because what I'm interested in specifically is what he has to say about the language.
Ignoré, cet héritage leur a longtemps été caché, tabou, interdit dans le discours public, mais les faits sont là. L'afrikaans, c'est une langue métissée, nourrie des apports africains, indiens et indonésiens, et c'était déjà le cas lorsque les Blancs
Yeah, Malaysian. I mean, not just Indonesian, actually, specifically Malay.
L'usage et la légitimité vis-à-vis du néerlandais, tout en faisant un pilier de leur identité européenne. Pour cette raison, de nombreux métis et noirs de langue africaine se cherchent à réclamer cet héritage caché à des...
Okay. Oh, okay, so this is good. See, the thing about that... So, I was wondering what his treatment of it, because one of the things about Afrikaans is that it has an undeserved bad reputation, specifically because it was appropriated by the worst assholes in South Africa in order to do racism better. And so a lot of people have this idea that Afrikaans is the language of South African white supremacists, which is not true. They appropriated it. If it was up to them only, they would be speaking English and Dutch. But they specifically decided to appropriate it at a time when they were trying to construct a white South African national identity that they could use in order to be racist more effectively in South Africa. But it is not, in fact, that is not the origin of the language. They didn't invent that shit. That was actually people they colonized who invented it. And so I was curious when I saw this video show up in our recommendations, is this going to actually get into that history, which is not very well known outside of South Africa?
Européaniser l'image de leur langue, c'est dur à dire, et à rappeler leur rôle dans la construction de cette idée. L'Afrikaans a quand même quelques particularités vachement intéressantes. Tout d'abord,
yeah, okay.
Toutes les...
Yeah, he said we're gonna get into what he calls the really interesting peculiarities of Afrikaans, because it's a fascinating language. I love Afrikaans. It's great.
Formes irrégulières ont été régularisées dans la grammaire, si bien que tous les verbes sont réguliers et tous les temps simples, comme le prétérit, ont...
Ok, pas tous. La grande majorité des verbes sont réguliers. Mais il y a des exceptions. He says all the verbs are regular and all the simple, and that's true of almost all of them. There are some definite exceptions, like vis, to be, and dink, to think, where they actually use the old where they use the Dutch forms for the simple past tense.
Paru au profit des temps composés comme le perfect. Ainsi, le néerlandais ik help ou ik heb geholpen devient
Ik heb geholpen. Okay, so this is the Dutch form.
Simplement ik het gehelpt. Si les néerlandais comprennent l'Afrikaans, les locuteurs de l'Afrikaans, eux, ont vraiment du mal avec le néerlandais, à cause...
Okay, so he's saying that Dutch people may understand Afrikaans, but Afrikaans speakers don't necessarily get Dutch. And I think I would actually say there's a limited degree to which Dutch speakers would actually get Afrikaans, because Afrikaans does all sorts of things that Dutch just doesn't do. Like one thing is there really isn't a simple past tense for the most part in Afrikaans. like a narrative past tense like you have in novels and things like that, where he did this, then they did this and stuff. For the most part, you find in novels in Afrikaans, it's present tense.
Tous les changements de paradigme irréguliers qui ont totalement disparu. L'afrikaans, on le connaît surtout pour sa double négation originale. Formé avec ni, hérité du dialecte de la Zélande, il faut obligatoirement répéter les deux mots pour former pleinement un énoncé négatif.
Yes, the double negatives. Ik praat niet Engels. Okay, it's not ik praat, it's ek praat.
Engels niet, je ne parle pas anglais. En néerlandais, on aura plutôt ik spreek geen Engels. En dehors de la sphère européenne, les influences lexicales se sont opérées différemment.
Ouais.
De nombreux emprunts de l'anglais n'existent pas, comme computer, girafe ou
Rekenaar.
appartement, utilisés en néerlandais, auxquels l'Afrikaans préfère des néologismes internes comme rekenaar, kamelpeert ou
Yeah, camel horse is a giraffe.
Onsteel. L'orthographe est d'ailleurs perçue comme datée par les néerlandais. L'utilisation du K, mais jamais du C, comme en allemand. Pas de IJ, mais un Y à la place.
Yeah, okay, the spelling differences.
Et ce, bien que l'anglais ait pourtant aussi été une langue coloniale imposée, y compris par la force, dans la région, et que le pouvoir britannique ait quand même aussi conquis le Zululand par la guerre et par le sang. Et bien que les anglo-sud-africains se soient eux aussi très largement investis dans les lois racistes et indigénistes. Quoi qu'il en soit, la langue africaine se recule dans toutes les régions depuis la fin de l'apartheid, essentiellement...
Okay, so this looks like a pretty good treatment of it. I'm going to switch over into something else. Also, I feel a bit of an ocular migraine coming on. Hopefully that's not going to stay.
And so I think it can be really helpful. Just put your foot down and...
Let's get back to the playlist. There we go. If this doesn't go away, I may have to cut this a little bit short. Okay, I'm kind of curious about this. Evil Dia is going to try to guess different Spanish accents. That is a challenging thing. Some of them sound very similar to each other, but it will certainly tell you,
what's up, Grimes?
I would say, in many ways, is a more, a better indicator of how the ALG Spanish is going for him than other things, because you really have to develop a feel for these different regional variants. So let's see.
So today we're going to have a little bit of a fun one. We're going to try guess some accents, but this time in Spanish. Now, I've done this once before in English, and if you guys saw that video, you would remember that I am phenomenally good at guessing English accents.
We have gone out to promote it for a long time. Like, I've released a lot of music and stuff like that, but
No,
South Africa.
I'm confused. This is either America or England somewhere. Boys, I don't know. Okay. But does that transition well to Spanish?
Wait, he thought it was either England or the US? And it was NZ. Okay, so that is indicative. Yes, I would tend to agree.
We shall see.
¿Puedes entender estos acentos en español?
Okay, this guy looks like William H. Macy.
Make sure to watch until the end, because even native speakers...
Seriously, I thought for a second this was fucking William H. Macy. It's like high contrast William H. Macy.
can't understand the last one. Please note, there are various accents within countries, but these are some of the most common.
¿Cómo aprendiste español tan bien? Cuéntame. Tengo como esa curiosidad porque hablas súper bien.
Gracias. Oye, tú también, Lat.
Wait, are we guessing already? Oh shit, okay, I was not...
Okay, like... I'm gonna say someplace in Latin America, but she hasn't said a lot of very distinctive things yet. My feeling is not Spain. Her vowels don't sound like she's from Spain. So maybe, I don't know, Peru, Colombia, I'm not getting Mexico yet, but I haven't heard anything that is very specific yet.
Ready for this?
¿Verdad? ¿Cómo lo hiciste?
En serio que estoy sorprendida. Tu acento suena súper mexicano.
Gracias.
Yeah, okay. Actually, the way she said Mexican makes me think probably Mexican.
Y cuéntame cómo conociste a tu novia.
Sí, mexicana.
Chisme. Ya sabes, como todos dicen, ay, es que quiere tus papeles, bla, 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 bla. Pero ya para nosotros es como una broma entre nosotros.
Oh, God, he does sound super Mexican.
Todo el que quiere los papeles eres tú.
Es lo exacto, es lo que le digo. Where is this?
I actually had, when I got to Colombia, when I was in Medellin, the first taxi driver that I encountered, when he heard where I was from, was immediately trying to marry me.
Accent from?
Wait,
are we guessing him? Her? Because she said.
I mean, his sounds Mexican as hell. Yeah, there are definitely differences, but Colombians in general are, like, for non-native speakers, one of the easiest accents because they speak very clearly. Their consonants they pronounce all their consonants, and they pronounce them in the ways you would expect based on how it's written.
It's Mexican. Oh God. I'm guessing. No, I gotta go back and actually pay attention to her talking. Okay, let me listen to her.
Es lo que le digo. Where is this?
Can you talk too much?
Yeah, the guy on the left, I mean, he isn't Mexican, but he sounds Mexican. Her, she sounds a little bit Mexican, not as Mexican as he does. So, I mean, Colombia, maybe Peru.
Pero ya para nosotros es como una broma entre nosotros.
Yeah, his whole rhythm is Mexico.
Sobre todo el que quiere los papeles eres tú.
Es lo
Okay.
Okay, eres, not sos vos. Eres tú, and that final S, she pronounces it. So, I mean, Colombia is a possibility, Mexico is a possibility. I mean, she doesn't have as strong, the way she said Mexicano, yeah, I don't say it that way, sounded kind of Mexican, because it's a different N, a little bit, but it wasn't very strong. But, yeah.
So it's South American.
Yeah, okay, so not bad. That far, I'm with him. Because the vowels come from a totally different place in Spain, other than Andalusia. Andalusia, actually, a lot of people who speak with an Andalusian accent, they actually sound like they're from someplace in South America, but they aren't.
It's Colombian.
Es lo que le digo. Where is this accent from?
Colombian.
This is Spanish coming from Colombia. Arguably.
Oh, well, not bad.
The favorite.
So good.
Yeah, I mean, she pronounces, I mean, one of the things about Colombian Spanish is it is very much Spanish pronounced as Spanish teachers would like you to pronounce it, apart from the ones who absolutely want you to sound peninsular. All the consonants are pronounced. There's nothing particularly special going on with the phonetics, and that absence of that is actually what is kind of characteristic. Of course, one of the things about Colombia, in certain parts of it, like Antioquia, is that people don't say tú as much as they do. They don't say vos either. They say usted for everything. Everybody's usted or su merced in a lot of parts of Colombia. But okay,
yeah.
Well done.
Accents of Spanish learners.
Ready.
Suave
Wait, that was the beginning one? Oh God, okay.
y sensual.
Como decir, vamos a latear, vamos a caminar. A latear, vamos a rodar, exactamente.
Hola, Ani, mucho gusto.
A latear. Latear. Esa expresión no la conozco. ¿De dónde? Latear. Porque latear a mí me suena como dar la lata, ser latero. O sea, it sounds latear is like, I've never heard that, and I've certainly never heard that to mean to walk. Like, to me, lata, it sounds like dar la lata, which means to be like a buzzkill. But apparently, wherever she's from, it means to walk. I've never heard that.
Hola, Ale, ¿qué tal?
Chistoso como ha mejorado mucho mi español desde entonces, ¿no? Hace 4 años este video.
Para alguien que no tiene dinero está misio.
Misio.
Está misio.
Está misio.
Misio.
¿Está misio o está aguja? Estoy...
Ok. Esto, bueno, no es chileno. Tampoco es argentino. Tampoco voy a decir es peruano. Okay. I'm just ruling places out at this point.
Aguja, estoy cero plata, no tengo plata.
Dice plata. Okay, plata. So, okay, we're moving a bit south. So, Perú es posible. Perú es posible, Ecuador es posible. Voy a decir Chile no suena chilena para nada, pero Bolivia tal vez también.
Aguja, ¿no? Como, oye, vamos a comer, no puedo, estoy aguja, o estoy misio, y de esa expresión estoy misio han sacado la expresión por la película estoy misión imposible.
Oh, chucha, weón, sí, eso sí. I thought that sounded, out of all these things, that did sound vaguely familiar. Okay, so misio, as in for broke, comes from Mission Impossible. Misión Imposible. God, pero no suena.
No puedo, estoy en misión imposible. Me gusta agrandar todo.
What Spanish is this?
Sí, no es bueno, tal vez, bueno, voy a decir peruana.
I was waiting to hear some pronouns, but I'm guessing this is...
Very good. He understands about vos. Yeah, of course, because I've actually seen him say that he's trying to approximate Argentina. Which...
I don't know, I haven't... In some ways it feels Mexican, but not quite.
Yeah, definitely not Mexican. They don't say plata. Plata is getting a little to the southern half of South America. I think plata starts more or less in Ecuador. It definitely, people say plata in Peru, and from there southward, everybody says plata. But she just does not sound Chilean to me, so that's kind of out. So I'm saying peruana.
Es español peruano.
It's close. It's the same continent. Man, I'm not great with this accent.
Peru.
Yeah, Peru. The thing about peruano, the thing about Peruvian Spanish is it is one of the other two that is, like, in terms of consonants, they tend to speak very clearly. They tend to speak very, they don't tend to throw a lot of unexpected things. Like in a lot of one of the major regional variations in Latin America is that the S often just disappears, or it becomes more of an aspirated k kind of sound before consonants. And Peruvian, like Colombian, does not do that.
Has some of my favorite slang. ¿Has ido a Peru? Leave a
I have.
comment.
Well, I've seen Lima, and I have been told many times by reliable sources, Lima no es Peru. Lima is not Peru. And I mean, I've seen a fair bit of, like, Peru south of Lima, because I've gone through there on the way to Chile quite a few times. And you can definitely tell Lima is not even like the other cities when you go south.
Down below. Hola.
Lima does not look anything like Arequipa. It does not look anything like Tacna.
Hola chicos, hoy me encuentro con...
Claudia.
Hace 4 años nos conocimos. Creo que fue en el año 2020.
Wow, hace 4 años, muchísimo tiempo.
Tú estás...
Okay. Okay, the vowels are very even in their length.
Estudiando en Canadá, ¿no?
Sí, estoy estudiando aquí en una escuela, en una universidad en
Okay, so we don't have an aspirated S.
Montreal. Estoy haciendo una maestría en responsabilidad corporativa.
What Spanish accent is the...
Okay. Okay, I mean, we're definitely in Latin America. That much is clear. She does not sound... Okay, we're not in the southern cone. That much is also clear. Maybe... I mean, Colombia comes to mind. Not Mexico. The rhythm isn't really there. And not Venezuela, because she doesn't do the aspirated S. Not Caribbean in general. She doesn't sound Caribbean to me, any of the Caribbean accents. Definitely not Cuban, definitely not Puerto Rican. Ecuador, tal vez.
That sounds Venezuelan to me. I don't know why, but it kind
No,
of
Venezuela tends to aspirate the S's.
does.
Este es español mexicano. If you...
Okay. Yeah, she didn't really... Yeah, the thing is, she didn't really say anything typically Mexican. Like, there are Mexican expressions that make this very easy. Like, talking about lana for money. Wool as money. That, you know, stuff like that. But, like... And she doesn't have the very sort of... kind of the rhythm that I associate with Mexican Spanish, where there's sort of a rising intonation towards the end of the sentence and stuff like that. What she spoke was she sounded very generic accent wise.
God damn it! God damn it! Why? God damn
I
it.
mean, to me that's understandable because the things I look out for with a Mexican accent weren't there.
That didn't sound Mexican to me. Okay, so far I'm one.
I will say I agree with Evil Dia. Like there are certain very characteristic sounds in terms of like the intonation stuff like that that are considered like you could consider like stereotypically Mexican ways of speaking, and she didn't have those at least in that brief sample. And there weren't like specific examples of like typical Mexican slang either, and Mexican dialect expressions and stuff like that. So actually, that was a hard one to pick, I will say.
Great.
¿Habéis escuchado ñaño alguna vez?
Ñaño.
He escuchado ñoño, pero ñaño no.
No. Guagua. Quizás.
Guagua. Ah, sí. Okay, guagua. Okay, es chilena. Es chilena. This is Chile.
Esto, pero en otro contexto. Es un autobús en otros países. Guagua significa niño, un bebé. Okay. Un bebé. Por ejemplo, dices...
But her pronunciation doesn't sound very Chilean, I have to say. The expressions sound very Chilean.
¿Cómo?
Like, guagua for baby is Chile.
Ahí está el guagua.
Ay, a mí me encanta esa guagua. ¿Cómo?
Sí. Además, como probablemente sabes, en cada país tenemos acentos locales, ¿no? Como yo hablo como una persona de la costa y...
Okay. Como una persona de la costa, pero no habla, en realidad no habla como... Primero, hablar de personas de la costa no es muy chileno eso, porque Chile es un país súper estrecho. Todo el mundo es de la costa y de la cordillera. Así que... Y tampoco... Okay. So I immediately, when she says she speaks like somebody from the coast, I immediately have to go back on saying this is Chilean. Because that is not a way that people in Chile really identify themselves, because Chile is a very thin country. Everybody's kind of on the coast. The coast is never very far away from you. And it's not a dialect identifier.
that sounds like a country with a lot more depth. Which, I mean, yeah, that's like almost all countries, really, when you get down to it. They go farther inland than Chile does. Like, Peru is a place where, you know, coastal versus non-coastal makes sense as a distinguishing feature, though we've already had Peru. And, you know, Ecuador is another place where there's coastal, where would make sense in terms of just the depth of the country. Though I don't know if they say Wawa. I will have to listen to her more.
This also sounds Colombian.
Bueno, las otras regiones tienen sus...
Yeah, like, and this S isn't Chilean. I mean, unless somebody was trying to make their Spanish more understandable, because he's a non-native speaker, and people kind of cool it with their dialect a little bit, you know, in order to make it easier for non-native speakers to understand to a certain extent. So, but...
Los particulares, pero no muy variados. Y chévere, ¿qué es?
Chévere, ok, chévere no es chileno. Ok, ok, no estamos en Chile. Chévere, tal vez Venezuela, pero Venezuela, ¿acaso dicen guagua en Venezuela, weón? Yo lo dudo. I mean, guagua sounds Chilean, but is not. But she's definitely. They don't say chévere really in Chile. They say bacán. Chévere you hear in Venezuela. You hear it in Mexico to some extent. I don't know about Ecuador. Probably Colombia. But I don't know about guagua in any of those places to mean baby. Because guagua means bus in some places. But, so yeah, very uncertain here.
Going on in there, which is mainly out of Mexico from my understanding of like how I've heard things. But I swear to God, it's also Colombia.
Pero seguramente entiendes que es como chido en México o
Genial.
yo no sé en otros países, genial.
So it's not Mexico, because she's telling us what it isn't.
Yeah, although people in Mexico also say chévere. That is a phrase that exists in Mexico as well. I mean, an expression that exists. But chido is the more typically Mexican way of saying it. It means cool.
In other places.
Sí, como bacán.
¿De dónde
Bacán es Chile. Bacán es Chile, weón. Bacán es 100% Chile. Okay, so she's... Okay, and she's comparing it to bacán. Definitely not Chilean. I had already kind of said that because... No suena chilena, pues, weón.
Español.
Ecuador?
Colombia's my
This is Spanish from Ecuador. Ecuador.
Process of elimination for the win. Because I've never been to Ecuador, and I do not have any particular understanding, particular mental cheat sheet of typical features, because I've never consciously heard a lot of Ecuadorians speaking. So that's interesting. They say guagua for baby, and they say chévere.
And
Close, it's right next to the door.
It isn't next door to Mexico, well.
Come on.
Si tú tienes un día hoy, tienes una reunión importante, por ejemplo, y yo te digo, mucha mierda.
Ajá.
Significa
Mucha mierda. Ok, para desearle buena suerte a alguien.
mucha suerte para ti. No tiene sentido.
Yeah, they say that in France too.
Una que se usa aquí también en el sur, que es perita. Perita es como muy bueno, por ejemplo, that's so good. Eso está perita.
Eso está perita.
Está perita, está perita. Si lo acortas, no dice ni es, dirías está perita.
Está perita. Where is her Spanish from?
Chucha.
I honestly don't.
Okay, none of those expressions gave me any particular regional indication, except not Spain, I don't think. But like we didn't actually hear her say anything, use any typical any discriminator consonants like hacer versus hacer or something like that. Shortening está to ta is a pretty common thing throughout the Spanish-speaking world. That doesn't really help.
No, but it doesn't feel like it's from the South Americas. feel like it's Spain somewhere, but I didn't hear any of the lisp sounds.
Okay, like, I have to say, he has definitely picked up quite a lot in terms of understanding being able to identify phonetic features. He is very accurately zeroing in on the things you need to look for in order to narrow these things down on a lot of these. So he's actually picking it up. So I would say, like, Dreaming Spanish has stood him in good stead here. And one of the things that when I did a video on Dreaming Spanish a long time ago that I pointed out that I really appreciated is that they make a point of representing all of the different variations of Spanish, at least somewhat. So you can get at least some... But okay, let's get down to it. So none of the expressions she said immediately mean anything to me. No es mexicana, tampoco va a ser... No es chilena para nada. Tampoco es colombiana, colombiano, ya lo tuvimos. No sé... ¿Venezuela tal vez? Ni idea.
Madre mía, this is Spanish from Spain. Or...
See... Oh, okay. I was tipping towards that, but she didn't, because her vowels sounded a little bit... But I wasn't hearing anything. We very carefully avoided any very specifically peninsular sounds. But, like, mucha mierda does sound much more like something from... Because they say that in neighboring France.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, God. Oh.
Castellano. Spain is known for their pronunciation of words like cerveza and the use of vosotros. Also, in Spain, you can use the verb coger, but in Latin America, be careful with that one.
Especially in Mexico, because coger, in Spain, you can just use it, it means to take coger el autobús. But if you say coger el autobús, in Mexico, you're saying you're fucking the bus.
Yo me llamo Che, o sea, es muy como animado.
Parece que somos parecidos a los italianos.
Es Argentina, weón.
Nuestra napolitana es tomate con ajo y oliva. Entonces, claro, cuando fui a Italia...
Yeah, her... Okay, she's from Argentina. She's obviously from Argentina. That even if I hadn't heard her speak... Even if I hadn't heard him set to saying che and how animated the speech is and how Italian it sounds, that pizza is that is an Argentine version of a Neapolitan pizza. It has nothing to do with what you get in Italy. I have to say I like the Italian version better. If you like huge amounts of cheese though, then the Argentine version is you can't do worse. You can't do better than that because they just pile the fucking cheese on it. And then people ask for extra, which I do not understand, because, like, how can you even get more cheese on it?
Y el pidieron napolitano, me dijeron, no, es diferente. ¿Cómo que es diferente? Claro, es algo distinto. La ciudad tiene esa cosa especial, ¿no? De muchos eventos, muchas cosas para hacer todo el tiempo. Bueno, a mí
she's talking about Buenos Aires.
Así que también ir a ver... Extraño bastante eso, conciertos de...
Yeah, okay, skipping ahead.
De tu madre no sabes parar una pelota, le vas a pagar, al arco y la tiras a la mierda, le vas a hacer un pase a tu compañero que está a 1 metro y haces así se la pasas mal.
Sorry, I meant Buenos Aires. Sorry, Buenos Aires.
Yeah, Argentina.
Argentina.
Yep, okay. Yeah, well, that one I was kind of expecting him to get because he's trying to learn Argentine Spanish, so you would expect a certain focus on it.
East Argentina. I know I said, like, the other place, but, like...
Well, yeah, you said Buenos Aires, but she was talking about Buenos Aires.
They don't actually have that accent through the whole country. They've only got it in kind of, like, the north...
Yeah, she was specifically talking, I mean, I know the description because Buenos Aires is the place that she was describing. A place where, like, 24/7 you can find things to do and stuff like that. And where the pizza looks like that.
We're not using tú, but rather
vos.
Tipo,
What happened
panadería y quieres un emparedado de jamón y queso, tú me puedes decir
Emparedado.
emparedado de jamón y queso, porque la gente me va a decir, pero ¿qué está diciendo esta persona? Tienes que decir, yo quiero un sándwich de jamón y queso, soul para todo. Por ejemplo,
Feeling Mexican though.
Hang on.
de jamón y queso. También, pero ¿qué está diciendo esta persona? Tienes que decir, yo quiero un sándwich de jamón y queso. También, por la influencia de los Estados Unidos.
Okay, well, sandwich. Sandwich is what they say in Chile, for one thing. But she doesn't sound Chilean.
Nosotros decimos so para todo. Por ejemplo, le puedo decir, yo llamé a mi hermano, so.
I don't know why, but I have a feeling that this is
Puerto Rico.
Mexico or somewhere near Mexico. It doesn't sound Mexican though.
Él me llamó para atrás.
Me llama para atrás. Yeah, Puerto Rico es puertorriqueña.
Para todo. Es de inglés. Entre menos para.
Yeah. The only that is the most typical thing of Puerto Rican Spanish is to say "te llamo para atrás," to say "I call you back." Para atrás is back, but not in this context.
Can be tricky.
That didn't sound Puerto Rican at all to me.
Te llamo para atrás. That is all you need. Nobody else says that. That is Puerto Rico.
Hanguear, meaning to hang out.
¿Qué te pareció hacer entrevistas en la calle? Me encantó. Es más, ya rompí el hielo.
Yeah, rompí el hielo.
Sorry, I gotta listen to that.
Yeah. Okay, skipping ahead.
And uses.
That's probably why. I don't really listen to anything from Cuba.
So let's see if we can get one left.
For obvious reasons, like content-wise, there's not much coming out of there.
Oh, there's actually a lot coming out of there. I mean, you look up Cuavisión. There's actually all kinds of stuff coming out of Cuba.
Of slang. Personally, this is one of the hardest accents for me to understand.
Exactamente, pero si vas a saludar a tus amigos en confianza, jóvenes, le puedes decir, hey, ¿qué lo que? ¿Cómo tú estás?
¿Cómo tú estás?
Ajá. En vez de ¿cómo tú estás? Solemos quitar mucho las S
Okay. Venezuela.
de las palabras. Muchísimo.
I'm not getting anything particular. I don't know, but it... Is this like a regional Spanish dialect?
It's beautiful Spanish in the
Dominican Republic. Okay, I would always get that one wrong. Okay, and it is time to wrap up for today. Thank you to everyone who joined in. I hope you enjoyed the stream. I will be back tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time to continue. I look forward to seeing you then. And now it is time for me